Hi, my name is Dave Burkhart, and for my final presentation, I will analyze the learning progression in Hearthstone's Arena mode. Hearthstone was released in early 2014 to large positive reception as the company Blizzard had gained popularity due to its previous hit games World of Warcraft, StarCraft, and the Diablo series. Hearthstone is an interactive card game that pits two players against each other with a user-made deck of 30 cards. These cards cost mana crystals, which steadily increases to 10 for each player's turn, and then stays constant at 10. Each player chooses one of 9 different characters, or classes, that were introduced in World of Warcraft: Warrior, Shaman, Rogue, Paladin, Hunter, Druid, Warlock, Mage, and Priest, all shown in the left side of the screen. Each class has a 2 cost and mana hero power, all shown in the top right, with the example for Priest in the lower right. Each player starts the game with 30 health, which again is seen in the lower right in the red gem. The goal of the game is to defeat the opposing player. There is a large set of cards available to all classes, in addition to a smaller set of cards specific to each class that are called class cards. Here is an example of a page of the Hunter class card set, and all the other class card sets are shown in the top tabs, where the neutral one is on the far right, and those cards are available to all classes when constructing a deck. There are 3 basic card types: Minion, which is on the left, Spell in the middle, and Weapon on the right. Minions have a specific attack in the lower left and health on the lower right, and are played onto a board where they can attack other minions or the opposing hero. Spell cards have a certain power and are cast onto any minion or hero based on what the spell does. Some spells are trivial. They can heal, deal damage, as the card here is supposed to do, or give minions more attack or health, but others can be more complicated. A weapon is a card that has attack value and durability on the left and right side respectively, and that can only be equipped by the hero. In addition to card type, most cards have an ability. For example, the ability Battle Cry means that the following statement will be executed upon being played by the user. Sephorian Bomber, the card on the left here, has the ability Battle Cry. The last property of these cards is rarity. There are 5 classes of rarity: free, common, rare, epic, and legendary, in increasing order of value. The right 2 do not have a rarity because they come in the basic set of cards when you start the game. However, on the left, for Sephorian Bomber, the purple gem in the middle classifies its rarity. Its rarity is epic. The rarity is important for an actual gameplay because they designate the worth of a card if one wants to destroy it to create other cards. Every property of card matters when a player is calculating the value of a card to put in a deck. Hearthstone has 3 main game modes: Play, Solo Adventures, and the Arena, all seen on the main menu screen. In competitive play, users make their own deck of cards based on cards they own and will play in games against others. Because of the difficulty of obtaining important cards in good card decks, this is deemed by many users as a pay-to-play mode, which is one reason why I choose to analyze the Arena. The solo adventures have you play against a series of increasingly tough CPU bosses. And as previously mentioned, most of my analysis will focus on the Arena. The Arena costs a relatively cheap amount of gold, 150, so almost any user can play at any time after completing a few daily quests. After entering, the user is given a choice of 3 different classes that are available randomly. Here are Warlock, Paladin, and Rogue. And once a champion is selected, the user begins the card selection process. While building the deck, there are 3 random card options presented on the screen, and the user chooses one of these 3 in each round of card selection. This repeats 30 times until a complete card deck is formed. Now that the player has a class and a deck, they can play other opponents at their own leisure. There are 2 ways for an arena run to end: obtain 12 wins or lose 3 times, whichever comes first. As wins go up, the rewards will become better if the arena run comes to an end. Even if the user ends with the dreaded 0 wins, 3 losses record, they get compensated with the card pack, usually consisting of 4 common cards and 1 rare card, which means they only net a loss of 50 gold. This feature is one that makes the arena easy to keep playing. The first learning principle equipped by all of Hearthstone, not just the Arena, is the fact that it is a constructive game. Constructive games, as defined by Kafai at UCLA, are ones that users create and control their own experiences. Hearthstone's underlying mechanics, user-created decks, user-selected classes, user-selected game modes, show that the user creates and guides their own experiences, even if there are many elements of randomness. Because of the creative ability enabled by the game for the user, constructive games are more conducive to outside-of-the-box learning and problem-solving. This type of game and perspective can easily be employed by classrooms, like having the kids create their own decks of cards that synergize best, and then perhaps taking them against other students. This does not have to be specifically with Hearthstone cards, but games like these have students learn best. The most important principle for a player learning how to play Hearthstone are its well-ordered problems. As defined by G of UW-Madison, this principle is a series of problems presented by the game that guide the player to success in their own learning process. The Hearthstone amateur will endure many elementary problems. The best example to point out is that a rookie will draft a complete variety of cards that ultimately do not come close to fitting together in a deck. Another is not sustaining board control. In the arena, you draft random cards leading to the deck of average quality, so the minions you have on the board heavily dictate the outcome of the game, which is why board control is so important. First-timers may not immediately grasp this. What truly embodies these problems are the stages of expertise. Breaking through a 1-2 win barrier just by becoming familiar with the game, a 3-4 win barrier by solving these first-time problems, and finally having a full expertise on the card set, which means knowing 4 deck influences, the cost-effectiveness of cards, card synergies, abiding by the mana curve, and knowing the parameters of the deck. To provide an example for one of these deck influences, card synergy, are the following 2 cards. On the left is Snow Fury Giant, whose cost goes down for each overloaded mana crystal, and on the right is Earth Elemental, a low-cost card with incredibly high stats, which are its attack and health, that overloads 3 mana. To see these card synergies is simple, but this is not the full story. One must take into account all 4 deck influences. To pick and choose between them is a beginner's problem. To become an expert, one must unite the 4 influences and create a powerful arena deck that belongs to a certain type. The well-ordered problems learning principle is characterized by the sequence of creative and interactive problem solving. While these specific problems may not be useful for the classroom, the process of presenting problems to the student is the same to have them learn best. Another learning principle that interacts with well-ordered problems nicely is reflection. As defined by Vidal, who draws upon their experience as an instructor of a university problem-solving class, reflection consists of any 4 sub-processes: concrete experience, active experimentation, abstract visualization, and reflective observation. To explain, I will use the example of a first-timer problem in drafting card draw. During my first run, I found that whenever I played cards at their availability, I would have my minions cleared, lose board control, and lose the game shortly after. I also found that when I hoarded my cards, I would get too far behind on the board and then lose the game while still having lots of cards. I learned that in order to sustain my board and pressure on the opponent was to have a constant stream of cards in my hand, as most arena games will not run to the late stages. I used my concrete experience in losing to then actively experiment with different ways to keep my cards, and finally I reflected that I simply needed cards that had me draw more. Hearthstone employs this type of reflection cyclically, which is to say that this is not a one-time process to learn each principle. It will take many iterations. This principle is already seen to have worked and clearly has merit since it is the subject of a university class. Engaging with all 3 of these principles so actively in Hearthstone is exhausting, which brings me to the last principle, pleasantly frustrating. The aforementioned G defines this principle to be that a student learns best when a task is difficult, but still doable, and the user can easily keep track of progress. While analyzing the well-ordered problems in Hearthstone, it is clear that a lot of work needs to be put into this game to reach the 12-win pinnacle, but it is also clear that learning process always progresses. The stages of expertise provides constant progression towards the goal, and even when bad luck strikes and takes down a powerful deck, the user still learns. Lastly, it is very easy to measure progress using wins as a progression metric. The win count may stagger a bit and will not increase by 1 every arena run, but it will consistently climb to 12. Most topics are not easier to grasp in the classroom, but they are in reach, and Hearthstone embodies this exactly. In conclusion, Hearthstone's arena mode is the most conducive to learning because of its constructive nature, and the user's learning strategies and reflections through the game can be applied to classrooms everywhere.